How Joshua Zirkzee will fit in at Manchester United. Today we're going to be looking into the tactics, the formations of how the Dutchman will fit in Erik ten Hag's Manchester United. Joshua Zirkzee is signed for around £34 million from Bologna. He's a player that we have been watching for a long time now, and we first brought him onto the channel in 2022 after a stellar season at Anderlecht. But United have waited a few more years of development for Joshua Zirkzee and finally brought him to Old Trafford, a player that I really like, that provides great value on the market. We can finally see what good owners are doing. Let's get this party started. So before we dive into how Joshua Zirkzee will fit in at Manchester United, we need to understand the Dutchman as a player. What's his role? How does he play? What's his strengths? And what are his weaknesses? A very unique centre forward, Joshua Zirkzee is one of the best technicians in his position. Not quite a false nine, but not quite a deep lying forward, Zirkzee is somewhere in between. Very good at dropping off into space in between the lines to receive passes to feet. Zirkzee creates a great link between midfield and attack. He's a great ball manipulator who can easily deceive defenders with body feints or a clever first touch, and this is a hallmark of his game. In the final third, Zirkzee is less of a goal scorer and more of a creator, but when he does get into the box, he likes to use his technical dribbling to open up a bit of space and get shots away. For Bologna, Joshua Zirkzee's played as a centre forward in a 4-2-3-1. Thiago Motta's Bologna were one of the best teams in Europe last season. They combined possession with centre-backs moving into midfield, wide wingers, and of course, Joshua Zirkzee dropping off the line to receive to feet. It was a big part of their possession play. When building out from the back, forwards dropping off the line and looking for those options into feet was a big part of them progressing the play. This is something that Manchester United have really struggled with. You got to think of Bologna's team as very much ball orientated. When possession was on, let's say the left-hand side of the pitch, the defensive midfielders would move over, the number 10 or number 9 would drop off and the winger would be there, creating an overload on one of the flanks. And this is where Joshua Zirkzee really excelled for Bologna, being that ball option, the ability to not only escape his marker, you basically drop so far off the centre-backs that they didn't want to follow him into those deep areas, because of course if they followed the two central players too deep, you'd have threats from wide areas to get in behind. Something that United could utilise with Marcus Rashford, Alejandro Garnacho, Amad Diallo, or any of the players playing in those wide zones. But in terms of Joshua Zirkzee, he's a player that likes to receive to feet and then either get himself turned and then play forward, or simply bounce balls back to allow Bologna to get into that final third. Bologna's possession play was sensational, and the centre forward dropping off the line was a big part of it. Something that United have lacked a little bit this season. Rasmus Højlund is a player that loves attacking the channels. Joshua Zirkzee is arguably the polar opposite, a player that rather would move away from the centre-back, get the ball to feet, and then combine, and then get into the penalty area. In terms of a box threat, what Bologna frequently did when they worked the ball into, a crossing position, either on the right-hand side or left-hand side, is they'd have multiple bodies in the penalty area. But with Joshua Zirkzee, because he would have just linked the plays a little bit deeper, so what you'd frequently see is the wide winger on the other side pulling one of the centre-backs, the attacking midfielder making that other attacking run, which basically opened up a big bit of space for Zirkzee to receive in and around the penalty area. Your near post is covered, your back post is covered, so the smart place to be is that cutback option, and that is what Joshua Zirkzee does. Think of Zirkzee a little bit like Roberto Firmino. Not a player that's going to score 30 goals in a season, but a guy that's going to facilitate the attackers. It's going to facilitate the players around him. His relationship with Lewis Ferguson was fantastic in terms of a striker assisting an attacking midfielder. No player in Europe's top 5 leagues got more assists than Joshua Zirkzee feeding an attacking midfielder around him. Great news for the likes of Bruno Fernandes, Garnacho, Marcus Rashford, Amad Diallo, and Scott McTominay. But overall, what you'd expect from Joshua Zirkzee in this Bologna team was to provide the link, get into the penalty area, but also look for shots outside the box. Zirkzee's got an ability to create a little bit of space for himself in terms of dribbles. No striker in Europe's top 5 leagues attempted more dribbles than Joshua Zirkzee. So what you'd see him do at times is receive in this space in between the lines, drop a shoulder, shift his opponent, and then get shots on goal. Part of his game that he does need to improve, but I like that he has that ability to create those moments, create those shots. He does that in the penalty area and outside the penalty area. 15 goal involvements for Bologna was a really good return considering, their team and their setup and their style. Joshua Zirkzee for Manchester United could do a similar role. Not the number 1 goal scorer, but a guy that's going to score goals to allow the squad to absolutely flourish. And finally, before we move on, we've got to talk defensively, because centre forwards are so important in terms of leading a press and filtering the opposition down a certain line, but also turning the ball over. Joshua Zirkzee made more high turnovers than any other player in Serie A and was second in terms of possession won in the final third. Bologna would collapse over in a very man-orientated scheme and system. They'd close the play down, and Zirkzee was the one that would either block the pass off or pressure on the ball and win it back, creating a lot of counter-attacking or gegenpressing situations for Bologna to directly attack their opponent when they've won the ball. So not only Zirkzee is a good link player, but also has that Roberto Firmino energy on the front line. Not as aggressive maybe as a Firmino or Carlos Tevez, but tactically very, very good. Knows when to press, knows how to press, and knows how to turn the ball over in the final third. So how will Joshua Zirkzee fit in at Manchester United? First up, let's look at him as a lone striker. United finished off the season basically playing a 4-2-4 with Scott McTominay and Bruno Fernandes operating as a double false nine pairing, allowing Rashford and Alejandro Garnacho to threaten the back line, of course beating City in the FA Cup final. If Erik Ten Hag wants to continue this, Joshua Zirkzee is arguably one of the most perfect centre forwards in Europe's top 5 leagues to facilitate this role. As we mentioned many times previously, Zirkzee loves dropping off the line and receiving to feet. What this would allow Manchester United is a ball-playing option that they could progress the play to, allowing Bruno Fernandes to play more of a second striker role, Zirkzee dropping off and Bruno making that alternate motion. As soon as Zirkzee's received play, he could either bounce it back into midfield and then maybe look for Bruno in behind, or alternatively get himself turned and then feeding one of the wide players to get United into that area. But in terms of Zirkzee, of course, he can play that role as this kind of, this false nine player that's going to be sitting away from the centre halves. What that naturally means Manchester United have is more of a threat in behind the defence, because if the centre-back follows Zirkzee into midfield and Bruno Fernandes into midfield, let's say, there's going to be massive space for the two wide players to jump in. And I think that's a big thing with Joshua Zirkzee. What he does is he facilitates the other players to score more goals. Manchester United don't need a Haaland. They don't need a player that's going to score 40, 50 goals a season. They need a player that's going to knit the attack together. They've been struggling in the final third. So for me, goals from Rashford, Imad, Garnacho, Fernandes, Kobe Mainoo moving that into that attacking midfield area as well is going to be a big part of next season. So having a number 9 that doesn't necessarily score all the goals is not a bad thing, and that's exactly what Joshua Zirkzee would do. So we looked at it from that kind of 4-2-4-0 position, again dropping off the line with Bruno, kind of doubling up on the opposition's number 6, creating a real natural overload in that area if, we mentioned previously, the two centre-backs don't jump. But alternatively, we could see a 4-3-3. A lot of top teams play this shape and system, have done very well over the past, 10 years in European football. What will that mean for Manchester United is a little bit more retention and ability to control games at the base of midfield. What we'd be looking at there is Zirkzee again would play this kind of hybrid role between a false 9 and a deep lying forward off the line. Fernandes would drop into midfield. You'd have a number 6, maybe a Ugarte sitting at the base. But it will allow United potentially to throw both of their fullbacks high. Something that I think really suits the squad. When you think Marcus Rashford, the inside channel was probably the best position you're going to get him in. Similar with Garnacho on the right-hand side. He's got a good ability shooting from there. Then when you throw in other players like, let's say you throw in an Amad Diallo into the mix as well, he's a player that excels in that central area. Which means United could play kind of narrow. Zirkzee kind of playing that Firmino role at the tip of the diamond, and United's fullbacks playing more traditional fullbacks roles and just operating on the outside. The setup would be Kobe Mainoo playing as a bit of a left half. Bruno could drop into the right half position, and this would allow United to dominate the ball deep. Football's gone into this interesting way where we see a lot of fullbacks inside, we see centre-backs in midfield. I love all that type of thing. But we've got to remember that United's forwards, their strengths are probably playing inside. Their strengths are probably playing as inside players. When you think of other players that United obviously have bought over the last year, Rasmus Højlund is the other number 9 they've bought. Of course they could play together. Højlund and Zirkzee arguably have like polar opposite profiles in that sense, which is a really good thing. But playing this system, as we mentioned here, with that deep base of midfielders playing kind of as midfielders and operating deeper in midfield to be the facilitators to get the ball into the final third, would allow United to play Rasmus Højlund as a right-sided player, a winger in defensive sense, a drop back but getting into an inside right, inside forward position. What would give United such ability in between the lines? Not only could you find Rashford in that zone, you could find Rasmus Højlund. Both players are excellent dribblers, but also Joshua Zirkzee is a player that loves receiving to feet and then shipping it to his teammates, either finding those passes in behind the opposition's defence, looking for Rasmus Højlund in that right channel or Marcus Rashford in that left channel. I really, really like the idea of playing a 4-3-3 with Joshua Zirkzee, a different profile to Rashford, a different profile to Højlund, the player that's going to drop deep, going to receive to feet, and allow those two players to tuck inside and make more penetrative runs. Of course, we know Diogo Dalot's really worked on his ability in those wide areas to get crosses into the box. And just thinking from that perspective, if, for example, the ball's been worked into the final third, let's say it's through Joshua Zirkzee, he's then linked with Højlund, Højlund's then played in Diogo Dalot, and Diogo Dalot spinning in behind the opposition's defence. Think about this for a second. Rasmus Højlund, Marcus Rashford and Joshua Zirkzee all in the penalty area attacking. United have struggled with goals. These types of ideas, going away from the model of throwing your two central midfielders into the penalty area, throw your attackers into the penalty area with Zirkzee as a false nine. You've got a proper old school 4-3-3, similar to Firmino, Salah, and Mane. That's the idea that United could do with Joshua Zirkzee operating as this Roberto Firmino position, throwing your two fullbacks high. That's one idea. I like that idea a lot. Of course, United could change how they attack in lots of different ways. If, for example, they didn't want to use Rasmus Højlund as this goal scorer, maybe they wanted to keep Alejandro Garnacho out there as the winger. Similar things could happen. Diogo Dalot could play inverted. Bruno Fernandes now becomes the box player. The double pivot's built of Kobe Mainoo and Ugarte. You throw maybe Luke Shaw as that wide player on the left-hand side. Diogo Dalot kind of making that free-man midfield in that central area, a role that he could facilitate as well. But again, United are getting goal scorers into the penalty area. This would be more of a 4-2-3-1. Diogo Dalot from right back, double pivot, Bruno Fernandes as a 10. Zirkzee off the line, Rashford playing wide left, Luke Shaw obviously at fullback and Garnacho on the right. That's another way to kind of create that threat in the penalty area, which United have lacked at times in a different shape in the 4-2-3-1 versus that 4-3-3 we looked at before. But let's go even further. Could Joshua Zirkzee play as a number 10? For me, absolutely yes. When you look at his skill set and how he plays football, he's a player that likes to receive in between the lines. He'd basically be a number 10 that'd be more of a target option into feet to then work the ball wide. What this would allow Manchester United, not only Bruno Fernandes in a deeper area to progress to play, a role that he should have played a lot more last season because United struggled to play through the lines. Again, they probably struggled for a number 10 as well. They just struggled all over the pitch. But Joshua Zirkzee as this kind of number 10 makes a lot of sense. Again, you'd throw Rasmus Højlund in as the number 9. Two players that complement each other massively. Zirkzee receiving to feet, Rasmus Højlund running the channels. This makes a lot of sense. United go into maybe a 4-4-2 structure. United need to start battering teams under Erik ten Hag, 4-5-0. And a way to do that would be playing 4-4-2. Two strikers, meaning United can field 4 attackers in the final third. One coming off the line, one running in behind. As much as we spoke a lot about Joshua Zirkzee being deep, he's also a player that does well in the channels, that's good at receiving in the channels and then opening up a little moment to shift the ball and get a shot off himself. We did a really good analysis video on Joshua Zirkzee. Does it make sense for his move to Manchester United? The answer, of course, was yes, but make sure you go and watch that video as well, because Joshua Zirkzee can play the channels, which would allow United's attack to be slightly different. Could be, Rasmus Højlund playing deeper, him being the link man, then him getting into the penalty area. It makes a lot of sense with United in this 4-4-2 structure. I think one last idea maybe worth looking at would be kind of a back 3. Could United play a back 3 with Joshua Zirkzee? I think one of the ideas that I take forward from that position is that narrow front three we previously spoke about. Joshua Zirkzee is the middle guy, Rasmus Højlund is the inside right player, Rashford is the inside left player with wing backs. I think one thing United would probably have to do in this situation, if this was to be the case, I think you'd probably maybe looking at signing another centre back. I think throwing in a Bramthwaite from Everton would be a good thing. Having Diogo Dalot and Luke Shaw as the natural wing backs. Again, building with a back 3, Lisandro as this kind of libero player maybe that can step into midfield when United have progressed it through the first phase of play. really creating a different dynamic for United's attack. But again, the close proximity of the forwards is something United need to be a little bit better at this season. You want Zirkzee, Marcus Rashford, and of course Rasmus Højlund playing as close as possible, and this shape would allow that. This 3-4-3 structure, natural width coming from the fullbacks in Diogo Dalot and Luke Shaw. You've got a good base in midfield and work rate of Bruno Fernandes and Ugarte, or Bruno Fernandes and Mainu, and also a back three that can deal with a lot of transitional moments. Alternatively, you could see maybe Matthijs de Ligt operating inside, or even Branthwaite operating inside, allowing Martinez to be one of those outside centre-backs, being a good progression option. Once again, as we spoke about, the option into feet of Joshua Zirkzee, the option into feet to Marcus Rashford, really looks good in this shape, and I think it's something Erik ten Hag should look at. Not only is it good from an offensive position, you're getting these strikers close together in a real natural way. You don't have to do much movement to get into these positions, but the back five defensively is very, very good. It would also allow United to play other certain shapes and systems in there. United could look at maybe playing more midfielders in this shape and setup, throwing Maino back into the team, throwing Bruno Fernandes more as this kind of, number 10 in this role, allowing United to play a 3-4-1-2 structure with Bruno as the number 10, Højlund and Zirkzee in the channels. And one thing with Joshua Zirkzee's finishing, he does suit this left centre-forward position because he's very good on that weaker foot. In terms of goals scored, he scored 5 of his 9 goals in Serie A from open play last season in that kind of inside left position in the penalty area. That would allow Rasmus Højlund to develop his game on his right side, which is something that he needs. And again, long-term, Rasmus Højlund is going to be a number 9. But seeing him in these wide areas is only going to see improvement, similar with Joshua Zirkzee. You want your number 9 to play all positions across the front line, so they're devastating all across those areas. Having 2 young strikers is so exciting for Manchester United. But also, we've forgotten one man who I am a big, big fan of, and that is Ethan Wheatley. Having him in this setup and team and structure, again, now Man United playing 3 strikers in the final third, is just another way to open up the opposition. 3 big strikers. When United are looking to score goals late in games, playing Wheatley, Zirkzee and Rasmus Højlund is something that they could definitely do. Just to conclude, Joshua Zirkzee adds a completely different skill set to Manchester United. He's a player that will drop off the line and create and facilitate for the teammates around him. Manchester United have got an absolute bargain at £34 million for Serie A's young player of the season last season. A player that can not only win the ball back in the final third, as we mentioned, with the most high turnovers any player in Serie A last season, but he can provide, he can link, he can score goals, and he still has a lot of room to develop under Erik ten Hag. The right signing for INEOS and Manchester United, putting the club back in the right direction. Anyway guys, I've been Statman Dave. How many goals do you think Joshua Zirkzee will score next season in the Premier League? Get into the comments below. I'm going to go for around 15, but I'm going to be throwing in 10 assists as well. 25 goal involvements. Let me know what you think down below. And any of the setups and ideas that you've got with Joshua Zirkzee playing Erik ten Hag, get down there as well. I've been Statman Dave. Subscribe if you're new. We'll see you later.
Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, why not check out some more content on the Statman Dave YouTube channel.